Hello and welcome to the Mindful Coach Podcast. And I'm your host, Brett Hill. I'm a mindful somatic coach and founder of the Mindful Coach Association. I meet a lot of coaches working with the Mindful Coach Association. I'm so inspired by their stories and the courageous work that they're doing that I created this podcast so you can hear them too. If you're aligned with this work, then join us at themindfulcoachassociation.com, where you can list your services for absolutely free and receive invitations to community meetings where you can network and meet your colleagues. We hope you'll join us. And now, the Mindful Coach Podcast. So welcome to this edition of the Mindful Coach Podcast. I'm really excited today to be talking with our guest, Mike Capuzzi. He's a publisher, author, and a book publishing coach, and has been helping clients create marketing results since 1998. He's the author of 19 books, including 2 Amazon #1 bestsellers, The 100-Page Book and The Magic of Short Books. Mike is the founder of Bite-Sized Books, a new publishing concept formula for creating short, helpful books, also known as Shooks, S-H-O-O-K-S, he calls them. These are ideal for business owners, entrepreneurs, corporate leaders, and coaches who are looking to increase their level of authority while also providing helpful information in bite-sized books. If you've ever wanted to write a book and weren't sure how to go about it, you're going to really want to hear what Mike has to say today. And I wanted to get him on the show because there's a lot of coaches out there who are sitting on some really great content and have really excellent insights that could be valuable to a lot of people, plus help to amplify their authority in the world. And it doesn't have to be like writing a novel. And so I wanted to get Mike on the show and say, so welcome to the show, Mike.
Hey, Brett, thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity.
It's great to have you here. So tell us a little bit, like if you're a coach out there, why would they be interested in writing a book, first of all, but then your specialty is these short form books, which make this a lot more approachable, I think, than, some giant tome of everything you've ever learned about, people and coaching.
Yeah. So we'll attack the first part first, the first question. I mean, as you said in the introduction, most coaches have content that they've developed. They have a specific niche they serve. They have a specific way of working with clients, whatever it is they, coach on. And I believe, Brett, and it's a fact because books have been around for thousands of years, but business owners, coaches, etc., have been using them for well over 100 years. I found research back into the 1800s where businesses have used books as a way to communicate their information. So there's no denying that a book, even in 2023 and beyond, is a very powerful asset to differentiate yourself, from your competition, to help rise up above, the competition, if you will, to establish the authority, which you mentioned, and really to help people. Still in this day and age, people appreciate books as a way to get information. So because coaches are in the business of helping people, it's sort of a no-brainer. I have a podcast. I just went in my 5th year, Brett.
Wow. So what's the name of your show? What's the name of your show?
It's called The Author Factor. The Author Factor.
The Author Factor. Okay, great.
Yeah,
You'll have to have people look it up.
The power of being a book author. But without a doubt, Brett, we have different types of people on my show. The number one group are coaches. So they far exceed the local business owners. So it's, I've talked to, literally over 100 coaches over the last 5 years, and they're all using a book. So I would encourage anyone who's either thought about it but hasn't done it, or maybe they started and have stopped, to really consider writing a book about what it is you do. Now, I'll just quickly touch on the second question, and then we can dive in.
Sure.
Now, books are great. I love books. I love reading books. I've always been a voracious reader. As I've gotten older, it's gotten harder and harder for me to read that 300-page book. I start with the best of intentions. 200 pages in, life gets in the way, another book gets in the way, and I can't believe how many I don't finish these days, which is really interesting. Yeah. But a short book, a short helpful book, which is specifically designed to be read in about an hour, really can still convey a level of information that will help readers, but more importantly for the author, the coach, it creates that it's a conversation starter, which will then allow interested readers, Brett, to continue a relationship with the coach, the author, by some very specific strategies that we employ. So, it doesn't, like you said, it doesn't have to be this long, laborious, took me 5 years to write. Those books are out there. There may be a good reason to have that book, but for a lot of folks, this short, helpful book format is much easier to publish. And for readers, they love them because they can read them and then, take that next step.
That sounds great. And so you have a lot of coaches on your podcast who have benefited from this?
Yeah, coaches on my podcast, and then I would say, a good chunk of our clients, because we are a book publishing company, with these short books, a good chunk of our clients are coaches, at least how I describe coaches. So it may not be exactly, what you're thinking of, but we have fitness coaches, we have business coaches,
Yeah, well, in our audience, we have executive coaches, leadership coaches, MDs. We have people like, for example, there's a woman who's working with, mindfully working with Parkinson's patients, and she has an expert set of knowledge that's really unique and specific, but oh my gosh, such needed information. Very, talk about a niche, but and an expert. She's actually, a medical doctor, and she's bringing this to her work. There are people working in all different kinds of unique categories of, let's say, challenged populations, neurodivergent, inclusion, diversity, inclusion, and then also corporate management and leadership and change management. So, it's all across the board.
Yep. Yeah, so we've worked with a lot of those. And again, the takeaway right from the very outset, Brett, is it is much quicker and faster to publish a book that's designed to be read in an hour. And these are real books. I know, here's a coach for folks with osteoporosis.
Oh, yeah.
It's a real book, right? But it's a short book, and it also follows a very specific formula from the very first page to the very last page that I encourage our clients to leverage, that is meant to help and inform, but also to create that pathway forward for those interested readers who want more from the author. So that's something that a lot of book authors kind of mess up. And
so can you follow up on that a little bit when you say follows a specific formula to help readers engage if they want more from the author? So it's almost like the book is a means by which you can provide a service and then also say, and if you want more, connect with me somehow? Is that right? Yeah.
So my background is I've built myself as a coach over the years. I've been working with clients since 1998. Hard to believe. And in the marketing world, I have been a marketing / direct response marketing expert for over 25 years now. So direct response marketing is a very specific type of marketing, which essentially, just by its the name, it's meant to design to elicit a response. Many business-oriented books, nonfiction books, they're written. They have all the best intentions to help people, and that's great. But the authors aren't thinking about the readers in the sense that if that reader wants more from you, they say, oh, this is a great book on Parkinson's disease, for example, that you mentioned. I need to know more. I need to know how I can work with this person. Most business books don't provide that pathway. It's up to the reader to kind of figure out what to do next. Our books are very strategic. I'm a marketing guy, so I came up with this formula. And it literally starts on the first page and it literally ends on the last page. And in there, we have very specific strategies to create response, to allow that reader to get more information from you. But if they really are interested and hot and bothered by what you do, also go down a second pathway. So we have what we call, not to get too into the bushes here, but we have a passive call to action. So that's for the reader who says, you know what, I love what Brett shared in his book. I'm not quite ready to start working with him, but I'd love to stay connected to Brett. So they take a passive way. They go download something, they connect, so some sort of email opt-in offer. But
you wind up as a result of that capturing their email address for your ongoing message.
Right? For follow-up. And then the active pathway is for someone who's reading your book and they say, gosh, I got to work with Brett. He talked about his program. I got to work with him. Okay, his first step is to book a strategy session with them. And that's the number one thing you want people to do. So this is for the last 40 years, Brett, 90% of our business has come from my books.
I see. So let me ask you a question, maybe a little out of scope, and that's that these extra pieces like the landing page for the giveaway and the other, do you help clients set those things up, or are those outside of the scope of creating the work?
We have. It's typically most of our clients have, they have somebody either on staff or they have some, but without a doubt we offer, a training for all of our authors telling them either how to set up a book funnel if they want to go to that level.
Yeah, exactly that. Right.
Yeah. And we have, over the years done book funnels for our clients. It's actually something, excuse me?
Oh, no, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt. You were saying it's actually something. No.
Yeah, no, so we have done that. And it doesn't have to be that elaborate, but it all depends on, for a coach, especially a coach that's doing a lot of stuff online and has, let's say, a worldwide audience, having a book funnel, which is just a series of very specific web pages, choreographed to be gone through in a certain way, it's a powerful thing. It's a powerful way for you to collect leads, generate leads, and then ultimately get clients.
Yeah, I love the idea in the sense that there are a lot of coaches who, in my world, it's like I find that if people kind of, I use this kind of odd language when I'm talking to my inner sanctum about it. It's kind of like they get into my orbit, right, in terms of communications. And they get into like all the stuff that I'm producing. And once they get into that circle of content, including the podcast or the Mindful Coach Association and all this other stuff, it's like, oh, that really warms up people to the larger world of the content that I produce. And, but getting them into, so it's, I guess the point I'm trying to make is they kind of have to get to know you a little bit. They have to develop a relationship as opposed to just a cold website you go to and say, oh, this guy looks interesting. I don't know anything about them. They want to have a connection. And so, and I'm actually in the connection business. That's what I teach, is authentic connection. And so Lord knows if I'm trying to model that in my own work. And so I really like the idea of a book as a connection point, and I like the idea of this shorter book. Now, you call this a SHOOK, S-H-O-O-K?
Yeah, a SHOOK. So it stands for Short Helpful Book. The story behind that, just a little marketing lesson. Again, I mentioned I've been in the marketing game for a long time, and I'm very much aware there's a ton of people, a ton of businesses that do what we do, publish books. Now, they may not publish short books, but they're still book coaches, etc. So much like your coaches, I need to differentiate myself. I need to differentiate our business. And I came up with this idea of a short, helpful book, and then I started thinking, well, what could I call that something unique? So much, not that I'm saying you should be eating fast food, but much like McDonald's and Burger King just sell they have hamburgers. One's the Big Mac, one's the Whopper, right? Essentially the same thing.
You need a brand name. You need a name.
Right. Yeah. So a SHOOK is a trademark word that we use. I would say 98% of the people like it. Sometimes I get some people are like, what the heck are you talking about?
Well, it's an interesting example, I think, of creating a memorable, and the other thing about it is there's hook. Marketing hook is kind of embedded in the word. Mm-hmm. And it's like, oh yeah, so it's kind of like a little hook. Like, what is that? I don't know what that is. I'm curious about that. And
I had a real quick side. You just made me remember something. I was a guest. So I have a podcast, but I'm also a guest like we're doing today. I was on a podcast, and all of a sudden the host started singing Elvis, All Shook Up.
All Shook Up. That's hysterical.
It totally caught me off guard. I thought it was great, and I had never I forgot about Elvis's song.
I'm all shook up.
Funny.
Right.
I might ask you to sing, Brett.
Oh, come on, man.
If you want.
Whoa. That's funny. So, now, if a coach goes into creating a book like this, is this something that they do as part of an overall marketing package, or are they expected to actually have this be like a money-making deal for them?
Yeah, great question. Great question. So the approach that we take, Brett, the money is not about selling your book on Amazon or at bookstores or, at an event, right? those couple dollars, they're not going to add up. I mean, you'd have to sell a lot of books, to make any money on the front end, by selling the book. The money is on the back end, right? So again, we were saying that all coaches have a service. Some of them may have products, some may have trainings. All of those are your money makers. And your book is, your shook is guiding readers to those products and services. So that's where the money is made on the back end. Yes, I have all my shooks on Amazon. Yes, we sell a fair amount. That money is just, I don't even know where, I really don't even look at those reports, because my focus is on getting my shooks in front of the right audience, and then allowing our follow-up marketing to turn them into clients.
Right, which is like you're on this podcast and you want to reach coaches,
Yep.
and this way you're spending your effort to get more authors into your business, which makes sense. And I'm interested in that, and I think our listeners will be too. So one of the questions I wanted to ask also was, like, if I'm a coach and I'm sitting there going, this sounds pretty interesting, and they really don't have a manuscript at all, like what would you say to them in terms of like how to organize around the content? There's two parts to this question. First is organizing around the content creation, and the next piece I want to ask is like budget. Like, how much money do they need to set aside? If I'm planning my 2024 calendar budget, I'm going, well, okay, I've got to produce the book, get the book edited, I've got to get a cover design, then I've got to get it published. What number should I pencil in there? Either engaging in your program, and like you said, kind of what the market is like for this kind of a thing. So I'm hoping you can give us a ballpark idea about what we're looking at in terms of planning. Yeah.
So, writing a book. So our books, our shooks, are roughly 12 to 15,000 words. That's a real book. It looks like a real book. It sits on a bookshelf. It has a spine. It's about an hour to an hour and a half read. Whereas most traditional business books are 75 to 100,000. So you can see right off the bat, it's a lot less. So from a purely getting it done, much easier, much faster. Our typical client gets their shook done in somewhere like 4 to 12 weeks, 6 to 12 weeks, somewhere in there. And it's step by step. If they work with us, it's a step-by-step program. Every one of our clients works directly with me. We outline it, we figure out the content, we bookend it, if you will, with our suggested elements to make it, a valuable book that can actually generate money for you. So if I can interrupt
for just a moment, you say you actually engage in the process of the content creation with the author. It's not like they come to you with a prepared manuscript and say, "Here, I see."
We've had that. We've had people say, I really like your formula. Can you do this for us? And the book, their book is done. Often we'll go through it and say, give them some suggestions. But no, this is like you're starting with a blank Word document, if you will. And, much like any good marketing guy, we start with what your goals are, what your reader's goals are, your intended reader, what you're trying to get across, what you want the book to do, et cetera. So there is a step-by-step planning phase, Brett, that we walk all our clients through. The content creation doesn't come until like after the third or fourth meeting with me before they actually go start writing. Now, to the budget question, God, I'll tell you, if you do everything yourself, like if you could do design, you could do the writing, if you do the copy editing, if you can do the cover design, interior design, if you're that much of a DIYer, you could get under $1,000 for sure.
To get to a book on Amazon.
For sure. Wow. Yep. And if you
But that's a lot of, like you say, that's a lot of DIY. That's a lot of like...
It's all DIY. Right?
Yeah. Like, what are the mechanical specifications for the book? How do I get the, all that kind of stuff?
Yep. And I'll tell you, Brett, and not to dissuade it, but 99 out of 100 DIY books I could spot in an instant. They break some fundamental rules. They break some fundamental design rules.
I have seen some pretty ugly books, I got to say.
Yeah, and I think an ugly book is going to do more harm than if you had no book at all. So I would always caution. I mean, it's just like coaches, right? Do I need a coach? No, I could go figure out how to get my head right, or I could go read a book, right? So there's always that. But when you're working with a professional who knows what they're doing, chances are you're going to bypass, if not, most, if not all, the mistakes, pitfalls that can be made. Now you can spend. I'm working with a client right now, Brett. He's in the tax coaching at a very high level for affluent people. His first book, which was with not a traditional publisher, but one of these folks that will help you, much like ourselves. He spent $75,000. $75,000 on his book.
Oh, I was taking a drink of coffee there. I almost choked on that. It's like, wait, what?
Yep.
$75,000.
Yep. And guess what? He was not happy with it when it was done. It looked nice. Man. It was a hardcover book, yada, yada, yada. But it wasn't really. So then he came to us and invested a lot less. We're in the $6,000 to $10,000 range typically to do his second book. And again, the big difference with us is all of our clients work directly with me, in all my experience. So we're a small boutique operation. We're not looking to, be this big thing, and we only want to work with folks that get what we do and appreciate what we can offer.
Well, that's one of the reasons I wanted to talk with you, because I got a sense that you're kind of a hands-on guy, and you're like, you're doing this directly. So it's not like if I or your customers are engaging with you, they're in a bureaucracy because I've talked to some publishers before, and they want like $20,000 up front, and they kind of, if you look at them like, well, I don't know, they just kind of like sneer at you like, well, you're not worthy of us. And then again, I wasn't entirely sure that they were getting, I felt like I was more involved with their system than they were interested in being of service to me.
It's a machine. I'm not going to badmouth anybody, but there's story after story. They're machines. And, they just have the cojones to ask for these really extraordinary amounts of money, which, some of them do provide value.
There's
services.
no question that they are providing some value. Right. It's just a matter of, is it what I or other coaches need? And the price point that you're talking about is approachable for a lot of people, particularly when you're talking about professionals. And it's a deductible expense out there.
For sure.
Be sure and mention that to people, because a lot of coaches are kind of new to business. They don't think like that. It's kind of like, oh, yeah, I can deduct. So, the IRS pays 20% of the fee for you right off the top. And so that's a good thing to keep in mind as well.
Yeah. Can I add a quick comment?
Of course, please.
You said a lot of the coaches that you talk to or listen might be newer. And the question that may be asked is, should a new coach consider doing a book before anything else? Is that one of the first things a new coach should consider? I don't know if you were going to ask that, but if I could answer that, because I think it's a good question, because in my opinion, regardless of the fact that we offer this service, I think if you're going to be serious about being a coach, there's nothing like having a book that you can autograph if you're at an event, that you can give away if you're on a podcast, whatever. Books are one of the most long-lasting, measured in years, Brett, as far as the value they can bring to your business. Most tweets, most reels, video reel, whatever, they don't have that longevity. A book is still seen as a really differentiator. I would encourage folks to think about it. I have two daughters. They're getting ready to graduate college in a couple of weeks, both of them.
Whoa, congratulations.
One's graduating a semester early, one's graduating a semester late, but regardless.
So it averages out then, right?
Right. The one being late has 2 degrees, so that was her reason why. But regardless,
oh, wow.
When she was a senior in high school, Brett, the summer of going into her senior year, we got talking, and she knew she was going to have the college application process coming up and all that good stuff. I encouraged her. We came up with the idea literally on July 4th. I can remember it distinctly. We came up with the idea of her publishing a book. And the book was on dog rescues, people who rescue dogs. We had just rescued our first dog. So we came up with this idea for a book where she didn't have to write all the content. So we invited a bunch of people who had rescued dogs. There was 26 people in the book total, so a compilation anthology book. But what was cool about this, Brett, 2 things. One, she raised, through some smart marketing, almost $6,000, I think it's over $6,000 now. So over $6,000, which we gave away to the dog rescues in the book.
Yeah.
She got a ton of media exposure. She was on the first page of our local newspaper, which we still have. She was in a local magazine, like a real nice magazine spread. And then when it came time for college applications, so this does translate to a new coach in business. She got several scholarship offers because one dean from one of the colleges actually wrote her a letter saying, we'd love to have an author, in the freshman class. She got some scholarship offers. She got 100% of the colleges she applied to. So I share that only because if at the time, I think she was 17-year-old could leverage a book to differentiate herself, I think it's a smart strategy for not only all business owners, but coaches in particular.
Particularly new coaches. And I agree with you there 100% because it can only open doors, right? Yeah. It's like that. And that's a good thing. And the other thing, coaches, there's so many things I could talk forever about what coaches should and shouldn't do whenever they're launching their businesses, but that's not what this is about. So having a book, and then, a coach has, the other thing I love about this idea is that it kind of puts the coach in the framework of what am I going to offer to people?
I love it. Yes.
And makes them really seriously get down to click here, get this thing. Yeah. And wire up the tech around all of that. That process in and of itself causes coaches sometimes to step back and go, well, wait. What do I do here? Yeah. But it really gets you down at the table to work that out.
Yeah. It also, and the other thing, it really does very well, and I've heard so many authors on my podcast say this too. When you sit down to write this book, and you come up with an outline, and it really enforces you, the coach, to think through not only your framework, but you'll start seeing, oh wait, I didn't even think about this opportunity, because you start thinking it more because you're articulating it, in a book. So it's a very good exercise to go through just to think through your framework. The other thing that we encourage all our clients to do is really come up with a brand that you can, even though there might be a ton of other coaches that do what you do, coming up with your brand, your own shook, if you will, is very important. And having that special sauce that only you have, even though it might be similar to what other people do, and just by the fact that you can give it a name and articulate it a bit differently, allows you to differentiate it.
Exactly so. And one of the things I tell coaches is like the thing that differentiates you from anybody else in the world is you.
Yeah, for sure.
Right. And so, get real with what is it that what's your secret sauce? What is it special about you? And that's work. That's like, meaning that's the inner work of like, how do I give voice to what it is that I'm excited about, that I'm motivated by? Yep. And that's a whole nother process of kind of eliciting that, getting connected to that and then putting that down on paper so that you can actually speak that to others in a way that gives them an authentic, clear, unambiguous notion about what it is that you actually are doing. And the other thing, of course, is that lights up the audience that you're after, right? That's the whole thing, is to be very specific about that.
The other thing I will just mention, Brett, is I have a saying that I say ad nauseum, which is I believe it's better to publish 3 100-page books than 1 300-page book. And, there's a lot of good reasons, right? It's more readable. But from a marketing angle, it gives you 3 unique opportunities to either attract a specific reader. So we have many of our clients go on to publish literally a series of short, helpful books. So I work with, she's not a coach, she's a lawyer, but she has published, I'm looking over here now, she has a whole series. It's called the You're Not Alone series, and it's on 2 are on dementia, 2 are on Alzheimer's disease. So 4 books that are focused on either if you're the person that has the disease or if you're the caregiver. So she could have done 1 big book, but this gives her a really flexible way to create, very specific messaging so that the person who says, you know what, my mom's got dementia, I need that book, or I've got dementia, or I've got, so it's this idea of having short, helpful content versus this big, book is a much better strategy, in my opinion.
And so, you've had this program for a while. So what's your process like? What's the publishing process like that you work through with people?
Yeah, well, one thing I didn't mention is actually I come from the engineering world. So crazily
is that
enough,
right?
Yeah, I have an engineering degree from Penn State. I did engineering for a number of years.
What kind of engineering?
Industrial.
Industrial engineering.
Yeah.
Deep respect, man. That's hard stuff.
It was hard stuff. I don't know how I made it now I look back because
that's hard work.
Yeah, it was not something.
For a few years, I dated a mechanical engineer, and she was deep into the tech of material science, and I'm like,
yep.
It's a big deal.
I don't know if looking back, I'm like, darn, how did I do that? Because taking 3 levels of calculus is like, and I wasn't. It didn't come easy. I
took 2 weeks of calculus, and I said, no, no.
Well, conversely, I started going back for my MBA. I thought, this is now 30 some odd years ago, right? I started going back for my MBA. I took my first accounting class. One accounting class, I was done.
Exactly, right? Exactly.
Yeah. But so you were saying about the process. So I mentioned the engineering because, again, I think very, like an industrial engineer, very methodically, systems, et cetera. So we've built a pretty cool system that our clients go through, and it's a series of videos. They answer some questions. We jump on a Zoom. We go through it. So I literally walk them through step by step. And as I mentioned, I think we go through 3 or 4 of those modules, if you will, before they're even turned loose to go right. So it's a very hands-on, it's not group coaching. It's like you and I are doing right now. Yeah. It's worked out really, really well.
And so does a coach have to buy an inventory of books and they ship them from their house? I mean, they just like print on demand kind of thing? Yeah. Is that the way it works? Yeah.
My first book was 2007. I had to buy 3,000 copies to get the price to where I needed it. Not only did I have to buy 3,000 copies, I had to store 3,000 copies.
Yeah, I've heard about that before.
3,000 books takes up a lot of space. So, that's whatever it is, 16 years ago. No, the answer is Amazon really changed the game. Print on demand. You can literally upload and get one printed copy of your book. We typically encourage our clients, to get them in batches of 100, because then sometimes things change, something happens, you need to make a quick edit. It's hard to make an edit when 3,000 books are sitting in your basement. So we recommend print on demand and
cool.
Keep it small.
So do you have something for listeners, like they can hook up with you about these details and get connected to what's going on? Yeah,
well, thank you for that. I know we're not necessarily showing the video, but I have 3 shooks. The Magic of Working Together, The Magic of Short Books, which you mentioned, that's the international Amazon #1 bestseller, and then The Magic of Gratitude. And I'm going to give your listeners, Brett, the opportunity to get all 3 of them for free. They can read them online for free. I call it my magic kit. There's that.
The magic kit. There we go. That's right. The marketing guy. Magic kit.
So if they go to MikeCapuzzi.com/magic, that's a hidden page. Let me know you heard me on Brett's show, and I'll email you the links. You can read all 3 of them, and they're the full books, and you can see what a shook looks like. You can read, and on the Magic of Short Books, Brett, I give you 100% of my secret sauce. I don't hold anything back. It's all right there. I've had people read that book, create their own shook on their own, then come on my podcast and tell that story, but it's all there.
Nice. And so I'll be putting that link into the show notes, and we'll also put some links to you on the Mindful Coach Association resources page, where we list association vetted service providers. And this whole episode is in the spirit of providing the audience and the Mindful Coach Association membership with access to what I call vetted service providers, people that are doing good work out there and can be of service to coaches. And so you're in that category on my list, man. I really appreciate the work that you're doing. So if you had to say the one thing that people could walk away with from this, what would it be?
Can I share 2 things real quick?
Okay, 2. I'll stretch it. Quick.
So the first one is literally and it's a cliche, just do it. If you feel like if you're in the business of helping people, really think about doing a book. I just think it just helps in so many ways. Just do it. But I'd like to share a quote, because I think this quote will really sum up why I think it's so important to try to be a book author. And it comes from Jerry Garcia, of all people, the Grateful Dead. Well, I wasn't a big fan, but I got to share this quote. I've got to share this quote because when I researched it, I couldn't believe he said this. So Jerry Garcia said, Brett, it's not enough to be the best at what you do. You must be perceived as the only one who does what you do.
Oh, I see.
Now, if you
That's
really
interesting.
think about that quote, that's what we've talked about for the last 35, 40 minutes. Being a book author allows you to position yourself differently. It allows you to share what it is you do, and it really does give you that differentiation point.
That's really an interesting point. Whenever I work with some the conscious marketing people who produce a bunch of big time names, Eckhart Tolle and other Tara Brach and that kind of stuff, and they say similar stuff. Like they say not only should you differentiate yourself, you should position yourself to be the leader in your field, right? And a movement. They want you to like almost be in charge of a movement, which is one of the reasons I'm doing the Mindful Coach, because I'm trying to summon the notion and put some energy in the notion that there's a movement afoot for coaches in the world to become a more mindful place so that we can all have a great experience of supporting each other and being present and having great relationships and thriving on this planet instead of some of the stuff that's going on, which is not exactly in that category.
No, unfortunately not.
But there's a lot of great goodness in the world, and a lot of people are doing really amazing work, and a lot of them are in the Mindful Coach Association. So I want to help them be the best that they can be and thrive and succeed. And I'm hopeful that they'll hear these, hear what you're saying and be inspired to put down their secret sauce in words and get it out there more effectively. Thank you so much for engaging in this work that you're doing and helping people become more successful and putting good word out there for all kinds of folk and making it formal and doing this hands-on. I really appreciate that you're the man involved with the actual production, because that's really kind of hard to find these days in the world.
Yeah, it is. Thank you, Brett. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. We'll talk later. All right. And that's it. Thank you for attending this episode and listening to this episode of the Mindful Coach podcast. Check out the mindfulcoachassociation.com, where you can sign up for free and join us and meet your colleagues and connect and get involved with all the goodness that we have going on there, of which this podcast is just one. We'll talk soon. And that's a wrap for this edition of the Mindful Coach podcast. We hope you enjoyed this presentation, and if you did, follow us and leave us a review. If you're a coach or helping professional that values mindfulness in your work, browse over to mindfulcoachassociation.com and create a free community profile describing your services so the world can find you. And you'll be invited to exclusive community meetings where you can meet your colleague. I'm your host, Brett Hill, founder of the Mindful Coach Association, coach and coach trainer teaching the Mindful Coach method. You can find out more about me at themindfulcoach.com. Until next time, stay present.